Crisis at our southern border is growing more serious every day. In Arizona, over 650 illegal immigrants crossing the border were just detained in just the last 48 hours. And according to our own William LaJeunesse, a dozen members of the caravan were arrested Wednesday night near San Diego for crossing the border illegally. Remember, only the first few hundred migrants have arrived. We're expecting a couple of thousand in just the next few days, and then many more after that. Let me be clear. I have said I really believe the vast majority of people in this caravan are probably people that are poor. They have good intentions. They're looking for a life for themselves, their family, a good job, a better future. And there is, for us, a massive security risk. Now, criminals also will take advantage of unchecked, unvetted migration into our country. We see it every day. Look at what happened in Arkansas on Sunday. A 29-year-old illegal immigrant opening fire on officers during a traffic stop outside of Fayetteville. We have the dash cam footage, but be warned, this video is disturbing.
Shots fired, kid! Kenny, I need units now!
This is why we talk about vetting people before they come into the country. Thankfully, no officers were injured. The perpetrator was taken into custody. But this act of violence is unacceptable, and the very reason secure borders, a strong system of vetting are vitally important. When I sat through a security briefing in Texas with Rick Perry, 642,000 crimes they had documented in a 7-year period of time. Some not serious, but some very serious, going up to murder. That's in one state. And while most Americans support common sense border security measures, far-left Democrats are continuing to demonize those who are just trying to protect us and enforce our laws. Take, for example, California Senator Kamala Harris, who just today literally compared ICE to the KKK in the sense that, well, don't you think that there's a perception problem that ICE seems like the KKK? Well, speaking with the nominee to lead that agency, watch this.
The Klan was what we would call today a domestic terrorist group.
Why? Why would we call them domestic terrorist group?
Because they tried to use fear and force to change political environment.
And what was the motivation for the use of fear and force?
It was based on race and ethnicity.
Right. Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
Officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel between what is constitutionally mandated as it relates to enforcing the law.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a perception
that puts ICE in the same category as the KKK? Is that what you're asking me?
That senator wants to be your next president. Now, what you just saw is beyond despicable. Now, to be that patronizing, frankly, idiotic, utterly disrespectful to men and women in law enforcement that put their lives on the line for us every single solitary day is shameful. How many border agents have been injured or killed performing their daily work? It's exactly what I've been warning you about. This is the most radical crop of Democrats to ever come to Washington. Instead of respecting our laws, our sovereignty, our Constitution, they push for open borders, sanctuary cities and states, and without a doubt, they're saying they want to abolish ICE, the very organization responsible for enforcing our system of immigration laws. They don't care how much it costs, what danger it poses to you, the American people. They want wide open borders.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pat Paris.
And I'm Stella Inger. Military officials were on the U.S.-Mexico border today to talk about adding security in preparation for the migrant caravan. 9 on your side's Taja Davis was in Nogales to get the soldiers' perspective about working along the border as they support customs and border protection.
Pat, Stella, talking with Army soldiers from the DeConcini and Mariposa port of entries. They say they're taking Customs and Border Protection's lead. They say the Department of Defense has military units out here until December 15th, but that date is mission dependent.
You know, engineering is engineering. regardless of where we are in the world, whether we're training back at Fort Hood, Texas, or whether we're in Tucson, Arizona, Iraq, or Afghanistan. We provide capability to whoever we're supporting. And in this case, we're supporting the Customs and Border Protection.
These soldiers are a part of the 5,000 troops near the country's southwest border to prepare for the expected arrival of the migrant caravan. Last week, they started placing razor wire above the border fence, a task that is not yet complete. And yesterday, the Army helped close 2 lanes at the DeConcini port of entry.
So it has been a challenge. It is not a standard mission set that we trained for back at Fort Hood, but as Army engineers, our job is to solve difficult problems for whoever we're supporting.
Weld the pickets up to the fence, run the C-wire with barbed wire underneath it, and strap it to it.
There is no official word yet if they plan on keeping these reinforcements in place after the caravan has arrived, if it does. CBP says there's a good chance the caravan will arrive in about a week. Taja Davis, KGUN 9, on your side.
The president has called it an invasion. Media outlets call it the caravan, and here in Mexico it's been called El Éxodo, the Exodus. Whatever the name, the group of thousands of Hondurans and other Central Americans has started to arrive at the U.S. border in Tijuana. One group looking to see whether they're let in to pursue asylum are the 2,400 Central Americans sheltering in Mexico City. Over the past few days, the predominantly Salvadoran group has gathered at the Estadio Palillo Martínez, an open-air stadium in the city. 26-year-old Walter Luna is from El Salvador. He says his personal experience with the country's violent crime drove him to leave San Salvador with a group of 2,000 others on October 31st.
En el caso mío, tuve la pérdida de mi papá por situaciones de la violencia. Lo mataron a machetazos en un río. Lo hicieron picadillo. La delincuencia me lo picó.
Violence and a lack of political and economic stability were common reasons people gave for leaving their homes. And Professor Cecilia Imaz Bayona, an immigration researcher at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, says the media attention the caravans have gotten recently has bolstered their numbers.
Se hizo viral. Vieron la oportunidad de juntarse. Saben que cruzar por México está lleno de riesgos. Pueden ser asaltados, pueden ser golpeados, secuestrados, utilizados por el crimen organizado como mulas.
Imaz says the group has found safety in numbers and an international human rights pact Mexico is party to and has advocated for. Members of the group also said they'd received support from several organizations along the way. Guadalupe Chipotle is the chief coordinator of an NGO feeding people at the stadium. She says that while the generosity of volunteers in Mexico City was enough to support the 2 large caravans that have already passed through, it's unclear if more will follow.
Todo Centroamérica está a la expectativa de qué es lo que va a conseguir esta población, porque los pronósticos no son buenos. En el lugar en donde queden varados y la forma en la que van a intentar sobrevivir, ese mensaje va a llegar a sus pueblos.
With a new federal government coming to power in Mexico soon and a populist president-elect who has expressed support for the migrants, the future for these groups is hard to predict. But for Luna, the future is focused on one thing.
Buscar un punto estratégico, la forma de pasar esa frontera. La situación es el objetivo principal es pasar la frontera, llegar a Estados Unidos de Norteamérica.
Let's break down the caravan news with CEO of Nexus Services, the company funding the law firm representing the migrant caravan, Mike Donovan, and former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, retired Army Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin. Great to have both of you with us tonight.
Great to be here.
Okay, so we have this video that we want to show. This is some migrants scaling a wall and arriving in San Diego. This is what Fox 5 there in San Diego is reporting. They say people on the Mexican side of the border could be seen climbing the fence near Borderfield State Park Tuesday afternoon after part of the Central American migrant caravan arrived in Tijuana. Several people scaled the fence. You can see them there sitting on top of it. A few jumped or crawled to openings in the fence onto U.S. soil. Mike, we were told they're not going to be here for a while, and this is not a legitimate thing.
Well, the caravan is absolutely a legitimate thing, and it's appropriate for us to all pay attention to it. We've had investigators embedded in the caravan, so I understand that this group that broke off is a large, several dozen members are LGBTQ, escaping persecution in their home countries. LGBTQ folks in Central America have a hard time because police oftentimes are also gang members. The gangs are very anti-LGBTQ. So this is we know thousands of people have been granted asylum in the United States because of LGBTQ-related persecution. So we know this is legitimate. Now, these folks come to the border. They don't know what to do in many cases, but they are making themselves known, and I think we should appreciate that. I mean, they're not crawling across and hiding. They're making themselves known, and they're trying to effectuate a process that this president and this administration has made very difficult by saying you have to go to very specific places. Migrants coming don't know where to go. It's a very confusing thing. And when you add them to the mix, putting thousands of troops on the border, militarizing our southern border, it's an incredibly dangerous thing.
Well, and just, so we're clear, they cannot take on a law enforcement activity at all. All they can do is work in a support capacity. Now, part of this lawsuit that you all are supporting, this is from some Honduran migrants and representing their children as well who are on the way here. You say this, or the lawsuit says this: Trump's professed and enacted policy towards thousands of caravanners seeking asylum in the United States is shockingly unconstitutional. President Trump continues to abuse the law, including constitutional rights, to deter Central Americans from exercising their lawful right to seek asylum in the United States. General.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of things wrong with this.
With the lawsuit, with the claims?
No, not with the lawsuit. I don't even, I'm not a lawyer. I can't answer that. But what I can tell you is, as a grandfather of 6, how do I, as a grandfather, teach my grandchildren to respect our laws, to respect our law enforcement when we have a spectacle like this of people taunting our law enforcement on the border and flaunting the fact that they're breaking our laws? How do I, and I understand this whole thing is an issue of compassion. But let me tell you, Monday was Veterans Day. How about a misplaced compassion that ought to be placed on these veterans that have served this nation so honorably and that can't get a colonoscopy at a VA hospital because of a substandard medical care? That should require some attention and compassion by the same people that are out here advocating to let these people into our country and break our laws.
Are you saying that it's a financial issue? Like if we're spending money on people come here seeking asylum or illegally, that those funds aren't going to people like our own vets?
That's exactly what is happening, Shannon. I mean, it's a matter of priorities in terms of spending, but it's also a matter of priorities in terms of compassion. Where's the compassion for these veterans that really need our support here in America to make sure they get the kind of care that they need?
And Mike, how do we balance this with having borders, having a rule of law so that people can come here and get the protections that they need legitimately? I mean, the New York Times reporting today, 800 are already at Tijuana, and they say thousands are expected to arrive in the next several days. I mean, this is going to be an overwhelming situation.
Well, I have a company that employs hundreds of people in general. We hire veterans. We provide great quality benefits for veterans. You can do both. You can support veterans and support the rule of law. We have a law that says that you can apply for asylum in this country, and there are constitutional rights around due process. These migrants have them. I think you can do both, and I think that
if they're not yet on U.S. soil, though.
Yeah, if they're not yet on U.S. soil, but they plan to seek asylum under U.S. law, then they have due process rights under U.S. law. And I know a lot of people have been confused about this, but it's a very clear thing. The law, the INA that relates
so why wouldn't everybody coming here say, I'm coming for asylum? I mean, everyone. Well,
because it's an
great
question. It's an arduous process. The first thing you do is go through a credible fear interview. So you get detained, and then you go through a credible fear interview with an asylum officer. That is an individual who works for the Trump administration. And only when that fear is determined credible are you eligible for release. There's a lot of rhetoric around this, Shannon, that's not true. People have to understand that these migrants seeking asylum go through a long, arduous process to get it, and we should allow and honor that. We shouldn't change it, and the president shouldn't be changing it with proclamations. It's not constitutional.
Mike, General, good to have you both.